Sorry? You sing any Tehillim? Which one so I can know? I don't know them all by heart.
I'm gonna start with 15, Psalm 15.
Give me a second. Let me pull it up. Yes.
O Lord, who shall dwell in your sanctuary? Who shall abide upon your holy mountain? He who lives with integrity, does what is right, and speaks the truth in his heart, who has no slander upon his tongue, who does no evil to his fellow man, who does not reproach his neighbor. In his eyes a vile person is despised, but he honors those who revere the Lord. He takes an oath even to his own harm and does not change. He does not lend money at usurious interest. He does not take a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things will stand firm forever. Kerachem av al banim, bricham Adonai al yireav, hu yadai yitzreinu zachur ki achar anachnu, enosh kechatzir yamav ketzitz hasadeh ken yatzitz, ki ruach avra bo ve'enenu, lelo yakirenu od mekomo, vechesed Adonai me'olam ve'ad olam al yireav ve'tzidkato livnei banim. As parents have compassion for their children, Adonai has compassion for those who show reverence. God knows how we are fashioned. God remembers that we are dust. The days of mortals are like grass. We flourish as the flowers of the field. A wind passes over them, and they are no more, and no one can recognize where they grew. But Adonai's compassion is everlasting. God's kindness to children's children, to all the reverent ones, endures age after age, unchanging. Mark, we'll now hear some words about Sandra.
First of all, I want to thank Rabbi Levine for coming here in these very difficult times. We really appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. Thanks for your kindness. You're so wonderful to us. We all, my sisters and I, really appreciate that. A little story about my mother, and as she, as you know, she was badly burned in this fire, and here she was in a state of total shock, I'm sure, and waiting in the lobby of her building for the EMT to come. And a neighbor of hers came by and saw this and saw my mother's hair burned, and everyone loved my mom. As I'm sure you all know, I mean, everywhere she went, everyone loved her. So her neighbors all adored her. and this woman came up and just said, was so sad she had to just touch my mother's arm, and then realized, oh, I shouldn't have done that. She's burned. And my mother looked at her and said, I know you care. And she told me this, and I was just, you have to cry when you picture, here's my mother in more pain than anyone should ever be in. And her thought was to make this other person feel good, because that's who my mother was. She made everybody feel good. She loved people. She loved life. She embraced everything about life. All her life she did. As a child, she loved to be involved. She was the fun person everyone wanted to be around. Growing up, seeing her do all kinds of amazing things. My mother ran events, helped community. She was involved with the Cub Scouts. All my friends loved to have her as a den mother. She would help run events I remember once, my mom was also very theatrical and a writer and an artist. She did everything. I remember one time we were going to this Diamond Jubilee for the Cub Scouts. And the night before, my mother made costumes, a little set with hand puppets, and wrote these skits. And my mother and I did a 2-man show on endless loop for this Jubilee. And we memorized all the lines on the way up. And to this day, I remember the lyrics to these songs, because my mother was amazing that way, and she wrote great things just at the spur of the moment. She didn't think, it just spilled out of her creativity. And life was just spilling out for her too. Everybody saw how full of life she was. And I know we're all going to miss her so much, because her presence was, just as everyone says, larger than life. She made people feel so good. Everywhere she made friends. Waiting on lines, she knew all the life story of all the people around us. That's the person she was. And I love that about my mother, and I know everyone else does. My mom did so much in her life. I just want to tell you just a few things, because many of you may not know this, because she didn't necessarily tell everybody. And she didn't even think she did much. She was upset that she didn't do more. She felt like she didn't achieve a lot. And yet, my mother ran events not only for so many elected officials, but she ran a Welcome to New York event when Vice President Hubert Humphrey ran for president. And I remember my little sister Beth, who was like 4 years old, handing flowers to him, saying, "Welcome to New York, Mr. Vice President." That was the big event in the New York State campaign trail. And my mom ran that because she was just that kind of person. Bobby Kennedy, when he was our senator, loved my mother. I didn't even know this so much growing up. I found a piece of stationery from his chief of staff to my mother, talking about what a good friend she was to the senator, how much he adored her. And I heard that he used to like to talk to her when he was depressed, and I'm sure all of us can appreciate that, because that's the person you would talk to when you were down. My mother was so creative that our assembly member asked her, he was trying to get rid of the death penalty around 1970, and they couldn't come up with a reasoning that would sway people in the legislature. And so he said, "Sandy, come up with something, be creative." And my mother looked at the Constitution and said, the First Amendment guarantees your right to redress grievances, and you can't do that if you're dead. So that shouldn't be right, to have a death penalty. And that became the precedent for many, many years. My mom was the associate producer of a documentary that was nominated for an Oscar. No kidding. And I once helped her on a short film, and it was so wonderful. I'll never forget these things. She did things with all of us, my mom. Growing up, constantly we were doing projects and making fun things, singing. My mother loved to sing, loved to play piano. She was wonderful. She would play by ear. She loved to dance. I tell people we learned to dance, my sister and I, practically before we could walk. Not quite true, but close. And I was very fortunate to have gotten to be very close with my mother all through the years. I worked with her on so many things, including when I started an organization in the court system for LGBT issues. My mother helped us. We ran these giant dinners every year. I mean, dinners where the mayor would speak and the head of the Senate would speak. And my mother helped run those dinners. She co-chaired those dinners and made the best dinner journal anyone ever saw. She would individualize every single ad to think about what that person was like, because she thought about people. She was so filled with empathy that she was so creative with that, and it showed up even in something like a dinner journal. You could see how much she really thought about each person. And I want to say a note about how completely accepting my mother was. She was the kind of person that understood that everybody is a little screwed up in life. And if you don't accept that about people, you're never going to have relationships. And my mother had relationships her whole life. She had friends from her whole life. So she understood you accept people for all that craziness, and that's part of loving. So I think my mother barely knew how to hold a grudge against anyone. It was like impossible. Because even as angry as she'd get, if you came up to her and said, "I'm sorry," she'd forgive you. And that's how it should be in life, and I wish everybody was like that. I try to be like that. I try to be like my mother, and I think as you all know, she's been a big part in shaping the person I am. And I'm proud about the things in me that come from my mother. And we believe in loving people, and that's the most important part of all. Because I know I have like so many hundreds of people that have been reaching out to me to tell me how much they loved and adored her. And I want you all to know that I am sorry for all of you, because I know this loss is yours as much as it is ours. The world is diminished by her absence, very really and truly, because she was there, and you knew when she was there. And life is not an easy experience. The best of circumstances. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what you have. Life is never really easy. And you have to know that and understand that and try and make it the best you can. And that was my mom. She made life the best she could. You know, there's that saying, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. My mother used to say that, but she actually did more. She actually lived it. No matter what she had, she made it good. If she had no money, somehow she was able to give you something. That's how she was. And she was so full of optimism, so full of love and joy. And if the world were filled with people like my mother, it would be a great place. And it should be. So if you love my mother, I urge you all to be better people to each other. That's the one request I will have for you. Make life great, be wonderful, be loving, and be forgiving. Because life is too short for us to be stupid. And I'm glad that my mother, I love her, and I've been able to have a wonderful relationship with her always. No matter what, even in moments where we yelled at each other, we loved each other. And for my whole family, my sisters, my brother, my cousins, my aunt and uncle, my adopted aunts and uncles and cousins, and all our close friends, and there's so many, and I've got this great life because I had great parents, so I'm so grateful. And Mom, I love you so much. I'm so sorry you're gone. I'm so sorry you're gone. You should be here with us forever. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But thank you all, and remember, please honor that request. be loving and make the world better. Thank you.
Wonderful grandchildren.
A wonderful grandchildren. She gave so much to her grandchildren. They adore her. The day before my mother passed away, my niece Rebecca, who was like so close to my mom, she was cooking with my mother through video conference and showing my mother what to do, and my mother called me up to say what an amazing time she had. And I feel so sad for Rebecca, to miss her, and everyone. I won't name the names. I believe the rabbi's going to cover that. But, thank you, Raquel, Adea, Danny. Thank you guys for being here in this hard time. And thanks to all of you who love her and are watching this. And, may my mother rest in peace, and may her presence be felt forever with all of your hearts. So, thank you.
It was an extremely moving tribute, Mark.
Thank you. It's easy when it's from the heart.
Yeah. You said something yesterday, Mark, when we were on the phone. You said people are measured by the lives they affect and what they leave in the world. Something to that effect.
Yes.
And it reminded me of a verse from the book of Ecclesiastes, from the book of Kohelet, where it says, V'sof davar hakol nishma. In the end, everything is heard. And there's a midrash in Kohelet Rabbah, a midrashic work on the book of Ecclesiastes, that tries to unpack a little bit about what that means. In the end, everything is heard. And the rabbis say, בשעה שאדם נפטר מן העולם, הקדוש ברוך הוא אומר למלאכי השרת, ראה מה הבריות אומרות עליו. When a person passes on from this world, God says to the angels, go see what the people say about her. It's quite clear that your mom affected a lot of lives and left a great deal in the world.
Thank you.
Among the tragic elements of your mother's passing is the idea that at this terrible time, this coronavirus moment that we're living through, your mom is exactly the kind of person that the world needs, as you were just saying. I've been talking about this in my weekly sermons for weeks now, how acts of kindness and compassion and selflessness and courage and love, how these qualities in a person are going to get us through this time. Your mom was loved by literally hundreds of people because she had that rare quality of being able to recognize the good in people. When she saw you, she would see all of you, the whole person, embracing what was good in you and writing off the rest to what all of us know, but few of us can really internalize, that people are complex and they have their faults, and we oughtn't dwell on those, but rather we should see what shines in a person. This rare quality allowed her to make connections with people that caused them to feel special, to feel seen. Sandy was the one person you went to, as you said, Mark, when you were feeling down. She was that rare confidant who would always make you feel better. She would make friends everywhere she went, and often these were not passing, trivial connections. She would keep in touch, making lifelong friends with people whom she had originally approached as strangers. It was hard not to make friends with her. Sandy had an infectious positivity. When she walked into a room, everyone would be happier. And as Beth, I think it was Beth, said, she was all about love, laughter, and kindness. She was one of those people who may not have had a lot, but she shared. In fact, just last week, in the midst of this crisis, when you kids were scrambling to get her food, she was off feeding a neighbor who didn't have enough to eat. This was something that everybody knew about her. God says to the angels, go see what the people will say about her. Her care of others extended beyond the circle of family and friends. She was concerned with everybody's rights, everybody's right to pursue happiness. Her political work included matters of civil rights, human rights, LGBTQ rights, abolishment of the death penalty, and her work had an impact in all of these areas. This vivacious woman, this body broad, as you guys said,
Yes.
with a mischievous glint in her eye, lived while she was alive, as Beth or Jennifer said.
And as you said, she laughed her way through it all, with everyone else laughing.
I wanted to offer you an image that I hope might bring you some comfort. A couple of weeks ago, at the end of the book of Exodus, we read, when Moses had finished the work of building the tabernacle, the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the presence of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled upon it, and the presence of the Lord filled the tabernacle. We had read earlier in the book of Exodus how when God's presence filled the tent of meeting, it would speak to Moses from between the figures of two cherubs, two golden cherubim that were perched on the cover of the Ark of the Covenant. And this got me thinking about the role of angels. What are angels in our tradition? And in the context of today, you know, I was thinking that the Hebrew word for funeral is levaya. And levaya means escorting. One of the mitzvot, one of the commandments associated with death, is that one should escort the dead to their burial place. But there's also another tradition of escorting. That at the end of the 7-day Shiva period, on the last day, there's a tradition to go out of your house, mid-morning, and walk around the block. And this tradition represents, in some interpretations, the circle of life, completing the circle of life. But there's also a mystical reason that what you're doing in that moment is you're escorting the soul of the deceased to their eternal home. Or at the very least, you're handing off the soul that has resided with you through the week. You're handing off that soul to the angel who will escort it the rest of the way. Now, in the Kriyat Shema al-Hamitah, the bedtime recitation of the Shema, which is said nightly, we pray to God for protection from all the malign forces that the night may bring. And we say, in that lengthy prayer, we say, Lord, my God and God of my ancestors, we say, may it be your will that I lie down in peace and that I arise in peace. Let my sleep be undisturbed by troubling thoughts, bad dreams, and wicked schemes. May I have a night of tranquil slumber. May I awaken to the light of a new day, that my eyes may behold the splendor of your light. And then, towards the end of this passage of the bedtime Shema, we find the following passage. In Hebrew it says, B'Shem Adonai Elohei Yisrael, Mimini Michael, Umismoli Gavriel, Umilfanai Uriel, Umeachorai Raphael, Ve'al Roshi Shechinat El. In the name of Adonai, the God of Israel, may the angel Michael be at my right, and the angel Gabriel be at my left. May the angel Uriel be in front of me, and behind me the angel Raphael, and above my head the Shekhinah, the divine presence. The Zohar, the great masterpiece of Jewish mysticism, talks about these four archangels. Michael is the protector of Israel, our advocate. Gabriel stands at the left hand of God and is the revealer of visions and the guardian of Israel. Uriel, the angel of light and repentance, and Raphael is, according at least to the book of Enoch, set over all the diseases and all the wounds of the children of men. I'm not necessarily suggesting that we take the image, the idea of angels literally, but there can be great comfort in the image. First of all, of protection. Protection of the soul of our loved one, of Sandy, and protection of our own fragile souls. And secondly, of connection. The angels are all about us, creating a kind of invisible link between us and those who are no longer. That idea reminded me of a Hasidic teaching about Yizkor, the memorial service that's recited in synagogue on holidays. And the teaching says, when a person dies, he or she is mourned by someone they loved in life. And every time that mourner recites the Yizkor, the memorial prayer, the mourner is holding on to the end of a rope. This rope stretches all the way to heaven, where Hamakom, the comforting presence of God, grips the other end tightly. Sometimes our loss overwhelms us and we drop our end of the rope. Sometimes in our sorrow or panic, we grab onto it more tightly, but God never lets go of the end of the rope in heaven. I know that on this end of the rope, holding on, are all the people who loved Sandy, who were impacted by her, and who carry her legacy. Mark, Beth, Jennifer, Danny, of course, and Rebecca, Elijah, and Morgan, Jason and Sarah, Zahava, Yael, Yosef, David, and Yehudis. Of course, Sandy's sister Leona and brother-in-law Eddie, and her nieces Barry and Dina, and Barry's husband Alan, and the kids Lily and Molly. Also, I want to mention Arlene and Cindy and Adam, Carol, Susan, and Joseph, and Lisa and Michael, Fran, Aaron, Alice and Harry, Danielle, Erin, and all the many dear friends, and anyone else that I'm forgetting. I apologize if I missed anyone. So we say down at this end of the rope, Tehei nishmatat tzrura b'tzror hachayim, may her soul be bound up in the everlasting bond of life. Zecher tzadik livracha, may the memory of the righteous be for a blessing. And we recite the memorial prayer. Velo aslichot, chanun berachum erchapayim verav chesed, amsei chaparat pesha ve'akravat yesha, umenucha nechodna, tachat kanfei השכינה, במערות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. את נשמת יתסר בת גרוס ומרים שהלכה לעולמה. אנא בר הרחמים זוכרה לה לטובה כל זכויותיה וצדקותיה בארצות החיים. הובטח לה שערי צדק ויורה, שערי חמלה וחנינה. בסתר כנפיך אסתיריה לעולמים, צרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Yetta bat Grus de Maryam, who is gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. At this time, Mark, I'll have you do Kriya. And before you make your cut,
Can you see the numbers? Can you see the numbers to make sure it's still recording? On the top.
29 minutes.
before you make the cut,
Yes.
repeat after me, Baruch Adonai,
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Dayan ha'emet,
Dayan ha'emet,
ha'emet.
ha'emet.
Praised are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, righteous judge. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem, Adonai Morach. The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken away. Praise be the name of the Lord. Make a cut, just to start it, and then you'll make the actual rip. Mark, make
A bigger cut.
the cut up higher, and do it on the other side. Do it on the left side
Oh.
if you can.
Sure.
Maybe get it near your heart.
Ah.
You can get it started a bit more if you need to. Like, even just a couple of stitches.
You make strong ties.
I think it's your fine. Cut it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Children specifically, any other corners would make it on the right side. But children make it on the left side to symbolize the extraordinary connection between parent and child and the role of the parent in the education, especially of the child, passing on the tradition. And in the case of Sandy, of course, that would mean passing on all of her values and all of her essence and the incredible goodness that she carried around with her, passing that on to her children and how it enters their hearts as well. And the tearing, of course, represents the tearing in our lives at this terrible loss. So, sorry?
Jennifer is on.
Your sister, she still Korea also.
Yeah,
Oh,
she's
yes.
from Korea too, yes.
Yes. Beth and Jennifer, you rip on the left side close to your heart, as if you didn't hear. Rip a piece of your clothing right there. And of course, my mother did pass on so much to us.
Yeah. All right, at this time we'll perform a kind of a ceremonial interment. So if you have the cups,
I do. I couldn't get here. I didn't touch them. Here's two. You can take. Oh.
Out the day will pass it.
so there are various traditions.
Yeah.
There are various traditions associated with the interment, but they don't really apply when we're using plastic cups. Under normal circumstances, I would show you that when we use a shovel, we actually use the back side of the shovel once or twice before turning it over and using it in the normal fashion. And then rather than handing the shovel to the next person, we restore it to the earth, and then the next person can take it themselves. Both of these traditions symbolize our reluctance of the terrible task that we have to perform and our desire to see as possible. Given that we're using plastic cups, it's just a tradition, it's not any kind of law. But, if you wanted to try to emulate that by using the non-open side of the cup just to, get a little bit of dirt in once or twice and then turn it around.
Rabbi,
Any way you want to do it.
under the circumstances, if I'm the only one, you think maybe it'd be okay if I use the shovel.
Oh, I suppose so. If you're comfortable
I'm
touching,
comfortable with it.
touching the shovel with other people's cups. I know these guys are wearing gloves, but
I am too. And I would feel much better if I did. I think Mom deserves it. he mention you? You know how much Grandma adored you. I know. I know.
Yeah. Okay. Oh.
Is a liturgical poem prayer based on biblical verses, which declares our submission to the justice of divine judgment. עצורך מפעולות ייחוד רחב, משפט אל אמונה ויינה, וצדיק ישרו. עצורך מבכל כל מי יאמר לו מה תפעל אשרי במטה ובמעל. נהנית ומחיה מוריד שאול ויעל. עצורך מבכל מעשה מי יאמר לו מה תעשה. האומר ויעשה חסד חינם לנו תעשה, ובזכות הנקרא תעשה. הקשיבה ועשה גדול, היצבר אבל עליה. אשר עיניך פיקוחות על כל דרכי בני אדם, לתת לאיש כדרכיו וכפרי מעלליו. ויגיד כי ישד אדוני צורי ולא עוולת בו. אדוני נתן ואדוני לקח, יהי שם אדוני מבורך. והוא רחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית, וירבה